Welcome everyone. Thank you for attending the session. What we're going to cover today is PRPs, PRZs, support and resistance, proper risk management, the magnet tool, trendline versus trendline extensions, and then lastly we'll go over my own markups. If you don't already know who I am, my name is Blake Olson, and I've been trading for quite a while now. I've made a lot of money in the market, and I hope to be able to share my knowledge with you today. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's pull this up. Oops. So, firstly, we've been going over lately in our last few sessions what PRP is. So just a refresher, the PRP is the price reversal point. And that one's pretty easy to find. It's basically where you use the horizontal line. You go on the 1 hour time frame or higher, mostly on major currency pairs. And you try to find out where price likes to bounce off of as an exact point. So if we look at this one, it's usually where double bottoms that are next to each other are also at. So I can see right here. I'll go ahead and highlight where I'm talking about. Right here, we can see that there's a double bottom there, and there's also a doji that adds some confirmation, but that isn't necessarily relevant to our PRP. However, if we go backwards in data, we can see here that the candle body finished right on the PRP here, as well as some wicks right before there as well. I'll go ahead and highlight all of those. All right, who feels that they already know what PRPs are, and we're pretty good on at least the PRP front? I want to see number 1 in the chat if you already know pretty well about PRPs. We feel like we can go ahead and move on from this one because we've been covering it the last couple of days as well. If not, go ahead and tell me as well. Perfect. Awesome. Love to see it. Awesome, awesome, awesome. We can go over that pair towards the end. I usually do my markups at the very end. We use what we learned from the session to do so. We can look at XRP, but we're going to have to wait on that for now. It shouldn't be moving too much anyways. This is one of the more relaxed times during the market, generally speaking. So let's go ahead and go to the price reversal zones, or PRZs. These are just a little bit harder to find than PRPs because there's so many different ways. There's so many different ways to mark up the price reversal zones. Sure, we can look at it really quickly, but we can look at that more in depth towards the end. Let's go ahead and look at XRP USD. If you want my really quick analysis, this is based off the 1 hour chart. I see that there is a doji here from a downswing and it's not going up. It should continue to go up for at least a little while. But for now, let's go ahead and continue with the price reversal zones. So how do you draw a price reversal zone? Is usually use the top of candles for the bottom, or the bottom of candles for the top of the bodies of the candles. This is what I generally do. Sometimes I'll add more confirmations if there's wicks as well. So I'm looking right here. And so we go ahead and use the rectangle tool, which is found in this in the place where you find all of the shapes, and we go ahead and mark it over. But how high do we put the zone? It matters because we can't have it up here. That wouldn't make any sense. That's much too big of a zone. So generally, you want it to encompass the price reversal point, and also to bounce off somewhere. I know it's really vague to say somewhere, but it kind of needs to be, just because it really is up to a lot of opinions exactly where you put it. So for this example, I use the top of this wick here, and then the bottom of this wick here and here to determine the top of the body of the price reversal zone. So what are you looking for on the PRP and the PRZ? So when you see price go into the zone, you're looking for it to essentially, which way does it break out of the zone? And that is where you can place your buy or sell entry. A lot of times it does bounce off of the zone, as you can see here and here. This is something that you want the candle bodies to finish inside of. You want them to finish inside of the zone. So as you can see right here, we have the circle. This big red candle, it came down, it finished inside of the zone, and it also hit on the PRP exactly. And because we see this green candle right after that, it broke out of the zone and did respect the PRP as well. That was a very obvious buy signal. Now, this wouldn't be necessarily a long-term buy, but if you waited till the end of the candle, which is very realistic, and you just waited 4 hours, within 4 hours, you could have 15 pips very easily, because you'd see the doji and you probably want to get out at that particular point. This is very realistic, very easy way to trade. I'm not saying it's necessarily the best way to trade or anything like that, but it is definitely a very valid way, and you should add it to your arsenal of trading tools. So just a little refresher really quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we keep going over this in the other sessions. Again, 1 pip is this value here. It's the number with the 4th decimal place, and then a micro pip, which is the least that a price can move against another price, is in the 5th decimal place. And those are visualized here. This top one, it looks like just a line, is actually 2 micro pips, and this one is 2 full pips, sorry, because there's green and red, so which are each a pip. All right, let's go ahead and move on from this. Let's go ahead and look at the magnet tool. We went over this last time, but let's go ahead and look at the magnet tool, and also at the same time, we're going to look at the normal trend line as well, because they usually go hand in hand. Almost always, whenever you're going to use the trend line tool, you're also going to want to use magnet mode on as well. So to do that, let's go ahead and go backwards in data so we can do some back testing with this. So we can see what would happen more realistically with this tool. And we can use the other one as well, the other extended trend line as well. So again, magnet tool is on. So what the magnet tool does is it basically snaps to price points on the chart. So if I have the cursor, if you can see, if you have a big enough screen, you can probably see where it is exactly. It's actually a little bit below the wick here, but of this green candle, but it's still snapped on exactly to the bottom, the exact bottom of the green candle wick right there. So it's pretty easy to use the trendline tool. It's not the best necessarily for this particular pair we're looking at. It does work better on some pairs more than others. One that it works really well on is USD-C80 or UCAD. So let's go ahead and try going to USD-C80 because I'm not saying too much just on where we're looking for that particular pair right now. All right, let's go ahead and look. Let me see. Right here looks to be good. So again, magnet tool's on, that's right here. And we can go ahead and click on the bottom of the wick. And we want it to see this price point here. We can just keep on extending it and extending it. And if we see, it appears to be a little bit off still. However, let's say that we did mark it up like this, and I'll show you what to do. So again, we're on the 1 hour time frame, and I'm using these 2 points here as bounce off points, and this one is my anchor or original point. When would you be able to draw this trend line tool? Well, you would be able to draw this tool anytime in between this area. That's 5 days and 7 hours. You have quite a while to draw this tool. And what would happen is you'd enter right here. You would have just a little bit of drawdown. You would have not much at all. It's 0.2, I think. Wait, let's turn off magnet tool for just a sec, because I think that's a little low. Okay, my bad. It's 6 or 7 pip drawdown if you were to enter right on the trend line. Again, we use this and this point as our extension, and this is our anchor. What would happen if we did enter right here? Well, it just because this is UCAD is a very long-term, it moves in the same direction for quite a while, much more than other pairs, especially for other major currency pairs. So let's say we just held it for 1 week. If we held it for 1 week, then we could, there's a double top here. It's the more realistic exit, or we could say even a little sooner, it's the same price point. So let's say we got out on this double top here, which I can go over in just a sec. We can do a refresher on what exactly a double top is. It would be 314 pips in 1 week, just from this one very easy to use trend line tool, extremely minimal drawdown with that. And how you would know that it's no longer valid, the trend line, is if the price on the 1 hour finished below the trend line. Again, that's the body of the candle finishing below, not the wick. So we saw that the wick did finish below, but the body of this red candle here did not. And also this, if you were on the previous sessions, or if you know what a doji is, that is a dragonfly, which we're not going to go over in this particular session, but we can cover that tomorrow for people that don't know about dragonflies and dojis. So let's go ahead and go over again what a double top is, because that uses the PRP, price reversal point. So I'm going to go ahead and write, this is a PRP. And I'll go ahead and put this in the chat as well. All right, so we know that this is a PRP basically just because it had the double top here. It is also a zone, which we can mark up in just a sec. So if we go backwards in data, let's double check. It's this top blue line here, in case we weren't. So as we can see right here, we can see it had another shorter term double top right there as well in past data. Let's see, we also see that this right here is pretty close there, also pretty close. So let's go ahead and mark up the zone for this one. Again, this is the price reversal zone. So I'm going to use the bottom of the top of this green candle body here to start the zone. And then we're going to go ahead and scroll over. I'm not done with that one yet. I'm just scrolling over so we can see for a better point. So for the top, let's go ahead and we definitely want to encompass the price reversal point. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the middle though. So let's use it right here. So what I'm basing that off of is all of these wicks finished right there. And then we can also see all of these bodies of these candles finished there as well. How confident is everyone feeling about both PRPs and PRZs? I want to just like maybe a scale of 1 to 10. You can type in any number you want. You can type in a number for the PRP and the PRZ. I know they're a little bit confusing of how they work together. Three, 7. Okay. All right. We'll revisit it on another pair. For now, we'll look at it on the Australian dollar versus US dollar after this. We'll go over it a little more on exactly how the price reversal zones and the price reversal points work. For now, let's go ahead and continue with the trend line. But we definitely will cover it a little more. So let's go ahead and, so we saw this trend line here. We know how to do that. Let's go ahead and delete it. So what is this big blue line, this horizontal blue line here? This is an extended trend line. So what do I mean by extended? It's pretty simple. It works very similar to a normal trend line, except for, in my opinion, they're a little better. So same story for these ones. You definitely want the magnet mode on. Not definitely, but almost for sure you want the magnet mode on. And all you have to do is you find an absolute point that kind of doesn't match the rest. And what I mean by it doesn't match the rest is we can see that almost all of these points are above, so all these down points, all the lowest, they all pretty much stay on or at that line except for this one. So that's how we know that this is a very relevant point. So let's go ahead and put that right there. So essentially how the extended one works is you only need 2 points that can be pretty close together and that will continue extending the trend line indefinitely. So all I would look for is the next point that this made a low. So we can say right here. So that you would do this anytime. Let me pull out the horizontal line or vertical line, excuse me. So anytime in between this line and this line is when you can mark this up on your chart. See, that's 5 days to mark this up. It's quite a while. And then, so what would you do? So we see that this is in an upward trend, and we see that it bounced off of here and bounced off of here. So all we would have to do is look for the next time it bounces off the same line. Remember, it has to be in between. We'd have to mark it up in between these two lines in order to catch this one here. I'll go ahead and mark it with the circle of where exactly I'm referring to. By the way, when you're drawing the circles, I highly recommend you turn the magnet mode off if you do choose to draw them, because it will try and stick to the exact points, and that won't work out as well. So this is a very realistic entry because we saw here this point and this point just extended, goes to right there. So what would happen if we had this very realistic entry right away? As you can see, also, by the way, again, I'll probably go over this tomorrow. This is another dragonfly that we see here. It's just a type of doji. So what would happen if we had our buy limit right on this trend line here, is we would enter, and within 7 hours, we'd catch up to 100 pips, or we can keep holding until we see a very thin doji. What I mean by very thin is just a very small body, which is right here. It's a very realistic exit. That's within a little less than 2 days, and that's 160 pips, 159 pips. That is quite a lot, especially on a major currency pair for such a small time frame with 100% technical analysis. Again, this doesn't have anything to do with news whatsoever. This is just using the trend line tool and maybe also the addition of the dojis as well. All right, so let's go ahead and go over more price reversal point and price reversal zones. Let's go to AUD USD for that. Let's try and find one on this chart. Let's go up to a little bit a higher time frame. Let's go to the 4-hour chart instead. Let's see if we can find one. Okay, perfect. I see one right here. There. I'll explain why I chose this particular point. So if you can see right here, I'll circle it. There is a perfect bounce off of the line right there. There's also a perfect bounce right there. We can see price was moving horizontally. That's a pretty close one for such a large time frame. And right there as well. So that's enough confirmations. It uses both the floor and the ceiling. So all I mean by floor and ceiling is that it's using that exact point as support and resistance. So support meaning it was higher than the price reversal point. It came down, tested, and bounced off. That's again floor or support. And then resistance is the ceiling. So that's when price is below. It comes up to the point and it chooses to respect it. Also known as the ceiling. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit and I'll show you again how to make the price reversal zones. So the zone, there's many different ways to make it again. So I'm going to use the bottom of these bodies of these candles right here. But I'm going to start back here just so we can have a larger view. And then we go ahead and scroll over. And it's not right there. I'm just moving the chart for a second. And it goes down to, let's say, right here. Yeah, I like that point. It shows the bottom of the price reversal zone based off of this point. And also I saw over here, this point right here as well. Is everyone feeling a little more confident about the price reversal points and price reversal zones? Or is this still confusing? I can go over another chart as well, or another point on the same chart too. Perfect, love to hear it. Awesome. So one thing I like to do, this is the reason why I choose to have my session right now, is there's something very special that will happen in exactly 4 minutes from now. Not exactly, let me move this out of the way. 3 minutes and 2 seconds from now, something is going to happen. Who knows what's going to happen in 3 minutes from now? Yes, exactly, the swap. So exactly at 2 o'clock local time, there is a new dotted blue line, a new vertical blue dotted line. That means a new day in the trading world. So what happens on a new day? Essentially, if you are in any positions right now and you choose to hold them for the next 2 minutes and 19 seconds, it'll be a new day. You'll notice that spreads are usually high right now. This is a really bad example right now. It's not high on this particular pair. Usually they get pretty high right before the day change. And also you'll end up, if you're holding the position, you'll pay a swap on the position you're in. It's pretty easy to check your swap that you will be paying. You can go onto your MetaTrader 4 app and you can go over to the quotes section And for anyone that you want to check, you go ahead and click on that particular one. So if we're looking at AUD USD, I'm going to look at it for mine, and you click on the word details. So for my particular broker that I'm looking at right now, it usually does vary a little bit from broker to broker. I have a positive swap of 80 cents per standard on the long position and minus $5.96 on the short position for AUD USD with my particular broker I'm using right now on my phone. So what that means is if I'm longing or buying AUD USD, then I will get 80 cents per standard that I have in the chart, and then I will lose $6 for every standard that I'm shorting AUD USD. And then this doesn't matter if you enter right now. You have 40 seconds to enter if you do want to see exactly how swaps work. Again, that's per standard, so it really isn't that much. Because again, if you are one standard, 1 pip of one standard is $10. So even if you're shorting, there's no reason to exit because of swap. It's basically a little more than half of a pip extra drawdown, which is moving much more down since we began looking at it anyways. So it's 5 seconds. Sometimes this doesn't work for me, and sometimes it doesn't show up right away. Oh, perfect, right there. We can see that this new blue dotted line just formed, and that's the signal of a new day. If you were in any positions, you should have had, you can click on it and it should say swap, and I'll say minus or it won't, or plus, depending on your position and on what pair you're in. And that's basically how swap works. It's a way for certain parties to influence other people's decisions. It doesn't matter so much. As you can see, it's usually pretty small amount that it would change on your total value of your trades. Sometimes positive, usually negative, not a big deal. So the swap does reset every day, at least for every broker that I've used. It does not accumulate, meaning if you held this for 24 hours from now, you won't necessarily have, you'll have a different swap. And when you exit, you only pay the new swap, whether it's better or worse than this one, doesn't matter. It's just the new one. That's a quick little rundown. Wait, should you let the swap decide? So you shouldn't necessarily let the swap dictate which trade you take. It does have some influence on the greater scheme of things, on which trades other people are taking. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you should be taking the reverse or pro swap value. It's usually such a small amount that it does not really matter. And it's basically just what certain parties are trying to influence others to do. It's usually around 1 or 2 pip value in total. So there's not really a good reason to trade based off of it. So let me see. If we go back to GU, right, let's go over a little bit of risk management really quick. I was just forgetting what else we're going to look at. So let's again go back to USD CAD, and let's go ahead and look at that one that we already found. Was it? Oh, was it the ICE one that we're looking at? Yes, this one. Perfect. All right, so again, we're looking at this position. We found this by using the extended trendline tool and the magnet tool combined in order to get this entry here. Let's see what happens if we're using proper risk management. Again, proper risk management, I'll write it out. I'll say per 100. Oops. That makes it easier. It's smaller. So again, let's pretend that we have, my favorite amount to pretend that we have is $10,000 because that's when you would, using proper risk management is when you would use one standard. So let's go ahead and say we have a $10,000 account. So how much are we using? Well, it's 0.01 times 100 because 100 or 10,000 is 100 times 100. So again, we're using 1.00 or one standard, makes $10 per pip. And let's see how many pips exactly we were in both drawdown and when we'd have a realistic exit as well. So if we entered here, our drawdown would be very, very small. It would be about 7.5 pips or so. And our gain on this trade, where would be a realistic exit? Well, I see a double top right here. So let's go ahead and use the double top at the exact point. It did go just a little bit higher, but let's go ahead and use the exact double top point, which this is in the way for me. So if you did have the patience to hold it 21 days, now that is a pretty long time. This is a very realistic exit because we saw the double top here, and the single top with a very long wick. So we'd have 5 days in order to place the take profit point of right here, and that was 520 pips. So 520 pip profit. Is everyone familiar what drawdown means? I'm just gonna say DD for drawdown. Okay, so essentially drawdown is, it means if you're in the, it depends if you're a buy or sell entry. If you're in a buy entry, it's where from where you got in, how much in pips it ever went down during your buy entry at the worst point in time. So at the very worst point in time for this particular trade, it went down an additional 7.5 pips from our entry. That's not bad at all. That's absolutely fine. It just matters if it hits your stop loss. You do not pay anything on drawdown. It does not matter whatsoever. It just can't be too high. If it's too high, well, then it probably hit your stop loss. 7.5 pips of drawdown is pretty much nothing. I severely doubt it hit your stop loss. If it did, your stop loss was way too tight. That would be ridiculous to have that tight of a stop loss. So how much money would we make if we did take out at the very worst point in time? If we took out at the very worst point in time, that would be negative $75 on our $10,000 account, which again, you wouldn't actually lose because you wouldn't have that. That's the very worst case scenario. It's if you saw the 7.5 pips and you got scared or something. And then the 520 would be $5,200 gain on our $10,000 account over 21 days. Again, this is extremely realistic. This is just using the double top, which I'll again mark after I type this out. Let's go ahead and mark it right now, actually. This is the double top I was talking about right there. That's a very realistic take profit after we see this one. So we exit on this one, not the first. So that's where we get the 520 pip profit from. So maybe you don't have $10,000, maybe you have more, maybe you have less. How much percentage gain would you get? Well, that's pretty easy. It's just your new account value would be 1.52%, or not percent, sorry, times starting value. So in percentage terms, that would be a 52% gain on account or new account value of 152%. Just from this very realistic trade, you do need patience. This is definitely a swing trade. It's not quite a position trade because it's less than a month. It's only 21 days. But 21 days is a lot more patience than most people have. Trading does require a lot of patience, usually doesn't require that much. It would make more sense if you were able to essentially gain multiple entries on this pair. So what do I mean by that? Let's see if we can find any areas where it's a good example. Yes, perfect. Okay, let's say we could also break this up and compound our money and make a lot more this way. So let's say same entry, we have that very realistic entry as we saw just by using the one very simple tool. And then we saw that it went into this price reversal zone here. We got out exactly at the PRP, which if you look at very closely, I'll zoom in to make it easier. The price really went up and essentially temporarily respected the price reversal point inside of the price reversal zone. It came down just a little bit. It did a doji and a double bottom next to each other thing. And then it continued to go up from there. So you could have two separate entries. You could have one entry of 344 pip gain, and then also compounded from that, entering at the doji, you still have this other one of 217 more pips compounded on the first one. So what I mean by compounded is essentially you now have 132% of original account, and then with that bigger account that you have now, you then place a larger trade and you get more money on that because it's compounded. That's a very simple way to look at it. There are other entries, like this is a very possible entry as well, just to stack your trades. Same with this one. There's lots of opportunities for it. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. I can look at other pairs now, or I will just go ahead and go over other things that I could teach you. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat. Yeah, we can look at UJ. After I put this in the chat, there we go. That is just the screenshot of the US dollar, Canadian dollar that I just marked up here. So let's go ahead and look at UJ, USD JPY. Right, we were looking at this one. I think price was about here last time we checked, and it went up from there. There's no reason for XRP USD to stop. I can see this continuing up. If you already have a buy on XRP USD, I would recommend that you keep your buy, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you make a new buy on XRP USD at this moment. For UJ, we can look at it more after UJ. Over. So if you notice, there's no blue line, no new dotted blue line on this particular chart. That's because of which chart version I'm using. There's lots of them to choose from. Right now I'm using ICE, and ICE is really weird. They actually choose to start their new day at 3, but you can ignore that for your personal trading, because on your MetaTrader app, it's 99% chance that it had the new day 12 minutes ago. But I do like looking at ICE because it's the most accurate chart. And yes, we can look at GN as well after this. So let's go ahead and use what we've just learned today. Let's check first. Is this the actual top? So all we do for that is we put a line at the top, but remember, this isn't valid yet. We have to go backwards in data and see when price was around here before, which it hasn't been for a while. This made a new high. Oh, right here. Perfect. So if we look right here, we can see a lot of points. This is the very recent high that UJ just had. We can see one confirmation. That's not enough. We want to see a little more right here as well. Now that's two resistance ones or two ceilings, but I also see this point here, the red candle finished exactly on the line as well. And then also right here, I would say this is enough confirmations. This is definitely a relevant PRP. So that's one ceiling confirmation for the sell on UJ. It takes so long to scroll back and forth. Okay. For the top here, also we saw this doji here that did make a new high. So that means it's more relevant as well. So what I would recommend for doing on UJ is, because it already dojied out and had the price reversal point here, I wouldn't see price going much higher than our PRP. And if it does, that does mean a continuation. So there's two different main ways to trade UJ right now. That one of which would be to enter on the sell position right now and have our stop loss a little above, maybe 25 pips above, which is a pretty tight stop loss. That's usually we like to use 50, but because we're using the PRP and it's right next to it, excuse me, we can use just 25. Should be fine for this one, and that way we don't have to risk as much money. I do still recommend using proper risk management for this. And the other way is we can get into the buy as well. We can do into either, because remember, this is a price reversal point. It's testing it right now. So there's two different ways to get into the buy. One of which is to get into a buy stop. What I mean by that is our entry would be higher than current price. And you might be wondering, why on earth would we choose to have a buy entry even higher than current price? Because that doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't we just buy it now? Well, the reason why is because we want to see price first break above the line and then come up to this point. And then once it's to that point, then we know it should be good for the buy. It's not necessarily good for the buy as of yet. Another way to do the buy as well is to look for a pullback. In order to look for a pullback or a retracement, we use the Fibonacci retracement tool. So go ahead and do this there. Let me bring it down. We could also have a buy entry. I know we didn't go over Fibonacci's in this session, but we can go over that tomorrow if you guys would like. Would you guys want me to go over Fibonacci's tomorrow, or is that something that you all have down pretty well? Perfect. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and go over that tomorrow. Perfect. Our buy entry for a buy limit, if you want to have a better than current price, should be at the 618 value. Now, this is essentially backwards because it's not backwards overall. We definitely want it this direction because we can see the break upwards. So that's why we have this 618 definitely wants to be above current price and not below. So we want the 618 level, but not this 618 level, 618 from the 1. In other words, the 0.382. So we can have a very realistic buy entry if you want to do this. There's two options. Our other option was the buy entry up there. Also right here. Why exactly do I put it there and not exactly on the line? It's because for buy entries, we don't get in at the, where is it? We don't get in at the price shown. We get in at a price a little above where price is shown. It's the buy price. It's also right here on this. So the difference between the two is the spread. So if price does come down and bounces off exactly off this point here, we want to be able to definitely get in. I saw spread go up to 3 at least, but I also could see this this level right here. This is a long wick. I could also see price using that as a potential PRP, which is why that I chose to place our other buy entry here. So again, we have 2 buy entries. I'll go ahead and label them. This is our buy limit. And this is our buy stop. But we actually have 3 because we have one last one we can also use. That would be, we can either sell it now, or we can even use a sell limit right at the PRP, maybe just a little below. I would usually put my sell limit like right there, really, really close. So for each of these 3 different trades, you can choose to take one, choose to take neither, choose to take none of them. We have different things. So for the sell limit, we would want our exit to be just above the PRP. We'd have a very tight stop loss right here at 25 pips up. For our buy stop, we'd do the same. We'd have 50 pips below as our stop loss. And for the buy limit, same thing, 50 pips below as well. Using proper risk management, you could even take essentially all 3 of these. And that way, you have the most chance of winning. It's kind of like trapping the market. It doesn't really matter what it does. You pretty much should win no matter what, as long as it chooses to either respect or decline the PRP. It's very hard to lose in this scenario in the long term. You might lose, you can't win both the sell limit and the buy stop, of course, but it might not even enter the buy stop, is what I mean by that. I know that might be a little confusing. This is a little bit more of an advanced tactic for trading. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat anyways. And yeah, I'll go ahead and put this in the chat, and then we'll look at GN after this. Perfect, there we go. And then let's go ahead and look at GN now. GBP NZD. This is the pound versus the New Zealand dollar. Let's see what's going on here. Let's see what happens. I don't think it does, but let's go ahead and mark up what would happen if we're using the extended trend line with magnet tool on from the bottom to right here. So this is a possible entry for a buy on GN would be if it were to come down, come back down to this level. And if it respected this level here, meaning that either the wick or the body finished on this level on the 1 hour chart without a body finishing below, then it would be good for the buy. Again, if the body finishes below this line here, then it's no longer good for the buy. It's good for, it's not necessarily good for the sell either though. It's just good for not the buy. I know it's also really confusing. But essentially the way I trade is when I think I have a good trade, I don't take it. I only take a trade when you're almost for sure know it's going to happen. So I almost for sure know that if price comes down and bounces off of this line, it uses either a wick or finishes a body on the exact extended trend line, then it will be good for the buy. However, if it breaks, it's not necessarily good for the sell. It could still go up. It's unlikely to. It's more likely to go down, but it's not guaranteed, so I wouldn't take that. Let's go ahead and look at if it, look for a sell entry as well. Where would we want to sell this? I see a piercing trend line right there. A little bit. It almost looks like it's moving sideways a little bit. There's a lot of up and down movement. Just going up, going down. This means that price likes where it's at. Because it's so unusually volatile, I would recommend not necessarily getting into an entry right now. I wouldn't use this line. I wouldn't use this this line here. It most likely will bounce off of it, but again, same thing as before. We don't like to take trades if we're not sure about it. So let's go ahead and make a different line. Let's go ahead and use a price reversal point. Let's see. I like right here, and that's the wrong color. There we go. If you don't know how I color my charts, it's pretty simple. I use blue for PRPs. I use green for take profits. I use red for stop losses and orange for entries. So let's zoom back and make sure that this is relevant in past history as well. Oh, look at that right here. That is a really strong indication of a price reversal point because price was moving a lot. It was moving up. Oops. It moved up 700 pips and then it decided to stop right there at the exact point that it's almost at right now and decided to go down. So that's how we know, even though it's only a single confirmation because it's at the exact peak, that actually would be enough to determine that it's a price reversal point. And we also have more data over here that suggests the same with this point. There's bottom of wicks there, top of that wick, top of that wick. It uses both support and resistance. So what I could see happening is instead of it stopping where it is, I could see it coming up potentially all the way to here, possibly. At that point, we can use a sell limit there. 'Cause at that point, it should go down from there. It should decide, at least. It should go. It would either continue going up or continue going down, but that would be where it makes its choice. So when it is making its choice, that is when we want to enter because we know right away, oh, it's no longer good for the buy or, oh, it's no longer good for the sell. And we can even put on a reverse position or we can just exit our trade or we can continue our trade if we essentially chose correctly. Is there anything else anyone wants me to go over? We have 4 minutes left in the session. I can go ahead and put this in. I'll continue this, I guess. Right, okay, we can look at XRP USD. Let's go ahead and look at that. Okay, so hopefully you can follow these lines. I know it's quite a lot, but it's just showing you of what are the main possibilities of what should happen. I'll go ahead and put this in the chart, and then we'll look at the Ripple again. All right, so here in the Ripple, we see that it's about 30 minutes into this candle that's forming. So far, it's looking like a doji. However, it has 30 more minutes to change. If it does decide to finish as it is within 30 minutes from now, then it would definitely be good for the sell on XRP. However, I don't think that it will. I think that it will continue to go up. Just based off how strong this candle was and how perfect this doji was, I don't really see it finishing already. I would say it's a little too soon. I would see it at least coming up to the same high here. It might make a double top. So if we make a double top, again, we use the PRP right there. And if with the PRP, we look for if it decided to respect the level or break it. Again, if a 1 hour body of a candle finishes above the PRP, it's definitely good for the buy at that point. It's no longer good for the sell. So we could have a sell limit, or if you're already in the buy, a take profit right here. I usually like to do 2 pips below the actual point. So instead of doing 441, I chose 421. Oh, I didn't put a space. That looks weird. There we go. That looks better. So yeah, take profit from a buy. If you do decide to get into that sell, and it does form a double top there, then where would we continue? So this, by the way, this is just TP1 essentially. There's no reason to get out anytime before this. You can move your stop loss to a stop profit before this, but there's no reason to actually get out of the trade. I could see this going up even higher than this point here as well. This is just the first point where it could decide to stop the trend. Where would it come down to if it did decide to respect this line? If it did decide to respect this line, it looks like we have a pretty strong PRP right here. We can just go ahead and use that one. So if it did, then I could see it coming down to here. And that would be so limit TP at, what is the spread on this one right now? Okay. 48. Do the same thing. Let's do 219. So I did this one just a little above the line here, just so that we can, I'll go ahead and screenshot this, by the way. Also, I'll make this a little better. If there's a doji there, yep, look for a doji there. If there, oops, didn't mean to make that one. In the circle. Yeah, see, we can already see that so far, at least, price is moving up. Like I said, I thought it would. I don't think it will finish as a doji there. We want to see a doji in here. That would mean a very strong sell signal, again, on the 1 hour time frame. And if there's not, again, if it breaks up and it finishes the 1 hour above this, then it's definitely good for the buy. So I'll go ahead and screenshot this. And our session is up. I hope that you all learned a lot. And if you can, please, Heather will send out a survey. I hope that you all learned a lot. And if you filled out, that'd be great. My next session will be tomorrow at 1:30. We are definitely going to cover Fibonacci. We can cover other things as well. If you want me to cover anything in particular, go ahead and let me know on Instagram. That's at BlakeOlson7. Go ahead and send me a DM on there, something you want me to cover tomorrow. I will try to cover it if you'd like. Yes, same time, whatever time this was for you. Pacific Standard Time, 1:30. So 1 hour ago, essentially, from whatever time it is right now, is when I'll have my session tomorrow. Again, I hope you learned a lot. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.